You know, most people don't understand how America was founded, how the banking system works, how this country really operates. There are two kinds of citizens in this country. There are citizens, United States citizens, and there are citizens of the several states. When our country was founded, we the people established the government. Therefore, the government was of the citizen of the several states. But what happened is, through time of this country, we ended in bankruptcy to the international bankers, which we broke away from in England, because Benjamin Franklin said probably the prime cause for the revolution is that King George III would not allow the colonies to an honest money system. So it was because of the money system that America really broke away from England, and John Adams said, "All perplexity, distress, and confusion which arise in America are not from defects in the Constitution or Confederation, but in the downright ignorance of the nature of coin and its circulation. Clear up the money problem and all seemingly unrelated problems will simply vanish." So all of our problems are because of the money system. We are owned by international bankers. As time went by in this country, we ended in bankruptcy to them. Now we are owned by them, and they created the citizen through the birth certificate and social security card. It is these instruments that bind you to the international bankers. That's why they can tell you what to do. This government, whenever you interact with an officer, he simply has a job because he's working for the international bankers. The legal language is the language of the international bankers. It is how they trick you into going into their jurisdiction, entering into their jurisdiction, because they use our ignorance, because we're drunk. That's why the Bible says in Revelation 17:2, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants were made drunk on the wine of her fornication. And then the legal language is also Revelations 18:23, which says, "For by her sorceries were the nations deceived." So we were deceived and tricked, just like Esau, to give up our birthright. Now it's time to redeem ourselves from this system. So the citizen of the several states established the government. The government and this country ended in bankruptcy, and they created the citizen of the United States, which is the 14th Amendment. Anyone born or naturalized, that means to fill out paperwork, and under the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. So the bankers created the citizen, and you are now of the United States. You know, a lot of Christians, they don't know what they're saying, because they're saying, "I'm not of the world," but yet they have a birth certificate and social security card. In other words, they're of the world. And God says to be separate. Even Paul said, stay away from idols. So these images and this fake money system are all images and idols. And God says in Deuteronomy 7, make no covenants with them. That's other nations. And then the images of their images of their idols or gods shall you burn. That's verse 25, Deuteronomy 7. So when God says to come out of Babylon in the last days, he means to stop being a beast, or stop making covenants with them, or redeem yourself. You know, I once asked the Lord, I said, "Lord, if Babylon is the banks and corporations, and if I come out, that's going to put me in the desert." And then I read Isaiah 48:20 and 21, which says, "Come out of Babylon with shouts of joy, utter it to the ends of the earth. say God has redeemed his servant Jacob? Did he not lead them through the deserts and give them water from the rock? At that particular time, I didn't know exactly how to come out of Babylon. But I did rescind all my signatures from those contracts. In other words, I no longer worship the image, which the birth certificate creates an image at your birth. It is your name in capital letters. That's why it's so deceptive. And you contract with it all your life. In other words, you bring the image to life whenever you contract with it, and now you enter into commerce with the international bankers. And that's how Babylon reigns over the kings of the earth, because now you become a debtor, because now you have to pay federal income tax. You are a slave to your own ignorance. And God made it that way. And some people say, well, the church has been, contracting with Babylon for a long time then. Well, the reason why you've been doing that is because God has closed the eyes of the seers, the prophets, and the rulers of the fallen nation. That's Isaiah 29, 9 through 11. He says, stay yourselves and wonder for this. Here, let me read it to you. Let me go to the chapter and verse so you know exactly what it is. Isaiah 29, 9 through 11. It says, stay yourselves and wonder, cry out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink. That's a fallen nation. The inhabitants were made drunk on the wine of her fornication. For the Lord hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets, the church are prophets, and the rulers, and the seers has he covered. This vision is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed. And then Daniel 12:4 says, seal up the words of this prophecy till the time of the end. Knowledge will be abundant. And then Revelations 18:1 and 2, I saw an angel of light descend from heaven, having great authority, and he lightened the earth with his glory, and cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. So, with knowledge, now our eyes are opened. The angel of light has come down. The Bible says, will not your debtors awake? Will they not arise? And then you will become their victim. That's Habakkuk 2, 6 through 8. So, dealing with Mystery Babylon in the end times, which is the banks and the corporations. And the banks are owned by international bankers. All the banks in this country are tied to the international bankers through the Federal Reserve, the Bank of Canada, all the banks around the world, Australia. I believe they have a hand in China, and also Japan and Dubai. That city, look that up, Dubai, I can't remember, the Emirates, United Emirates or whatever. That was a booming city, and basically, they got hit real hard in 2008 because the dollar really suffered and the markets really suffered, and the entire system really took a hit. I forgot where I was going with that. So anyway, yeah, the central banks, it also includes the UN, the International Monetary Fund, which is the United States Treasury, the World Bank, Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, all of these entities, the FBI, the CIA, England's M16, all these entities are all NASA. They're all entities of the bankers. Bankers control the whole world. That's why the Bible says, that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth, because the kings of the earth commit fornication. See, if we were on a gold standard, they could not, the liberals cannot fund this government because they wouldn't have any money. And Thomas Jefferson said, and fiat currency is borrowed into the system from the international bankers. That's why they control us. And Thomas Jefferson said, if I could add one amendment to the Constitution, it would be to keep the government from borrowing. I would depend upon this alone to keep the government within the confines of the Constitution. So anytime, Thomas Jefferson said, the course of history is government must grow and liberty must yield. So it is with this fiat currency and the attitudes of United States citizens, which are of the bankrupted country, who cannot live within their means, and the law, which is no state shall coin money on anything but gold and silver. It is through this process that government can grow. And then Isaiah 46, 1 through 7, which is very important in understanding the gold system and the beast, is it says, Bel bows down, Nebo stoops low. Study this out. Bel and Nebo are the prophets and the rulers of Babylon. Their idols are upon the beast. That's fiat currency. America's a beast now. And it says they are weary from the heavy load. That's because there's unemployment, there's oppression, the government's too big, they oppress us, they take our rights and property, and we don't understand, and that's why it's a fraud. And then in verse 6 of Isaiah 46, it says, some lavish gold out of the bag. They hire a goldsmith to make it into a god. So they lavish gold out of the bag means they take it out of the bag and they give it to the they hire a goldsmith to make that into a god, which is fake money. So they love the fake money more than they love gold and silver, because gold and silver is real value. Fiat currency enables them to get more than what gold can give them. They borrow themselves into prosperity, which is, Bible says, owe no man anything. And then it's one of the curses in Deuteronomy 28 is, if you obey God, you will lend to many nations and not borrow. But if you are cursed, then the stranger, which is Mystery Babylon, that is in your midst will rise high above you. He will lend to you. You will not lend to him. And that's the bank. And that's a curse in Deuteronomy 28:43. And this curse to a nation, to Israel, when God was speaking to Israel, is also a curse to the nations. Isaiah 24, which says, I will lay waste the earth, for the earth and its inhabitants have forsaken the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse consumes the earth. I think that's verse 6. So the curse of Deuteronomy 28:43, the stranger that is in your midst, has consumed the earth. So that's the difference between a United States citizen and an American. An American created the government, which the government is of us, and then we became bankrupt, and now the citizen, is bankrupt to the United States, which is now owned by international bankers and is a corporation, and they create the citizen through the birth certificate, social security card. And it's these instruments are instruments of bankruptcy, because that's what they created, for you to give up your sovereignty and your birthright. When you sign that, you are, a lot of people say, well, how can you make a living if you don't have a birth certificate and social security card? And that's exactly what happened with Esau. He said, well, this birthright ain't doing me no good because I'm hungry. Now I want a bowl of soup. So Jacob gave him a bowl of soup, and he gave Jacob his birthright for a full stomach. And that's exactly what people are doing with the birth certificate and social security card. They are giving up their birthright for a full stomach. And that is a United States citizen. They're of the country. When God says, be not of the world, That's what that means, because that is real. That's true paganism. Is when you have a birth certificate and social security card, that is true paganism, because you're now of the country. And God says, come out of Babylon, redeem. Has God not redeemed his servant Jacob? And then if you come out, Revelations, I think it's 12. Oh no, not 12. The 144,000, they were redeemed from among men. I'll get into that in the next video, about the beast and the 144,000. But anyway, thanks.